both Cassie Carlson and the Athletics' Dan Wiederer can now hear me. Guys, how's Hallis Hall right now?
We can hear you.
All
hey,
right.
Lou. Hey, Tina. Yes.
Terrific. Let's talk about Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson talked to the media earlier today. Cassie, I want you to give me your initial thoughts on the feeling inside Hallis Hall now that the coaches and players have had an opportunity to look back at Monday night's game.
Well, I think the feeling is that they have a short week, so they can't really dwell on the past for too long. They're going to have to move on and go into what Ben Johnson admitted is a very hostile environment at Ford Field, and going for his first time back to Detroit to a fan base that is not happy that he left to go to a division rival. And there was a Detroit writer inside Hallis Hall today who asked him about the decision of, you know, coming to Chicago, if it was tough. And he said he has a ton of great relationships, not only himself, but his family back in Detroit. So, of course, he had to weigh those, but couldn't pass up an opportunity like this. So I imagine for Ben Johnson, despite him saying, Dan, that when it comes Sunday, he takes the field, it's all going to be about winning the game. There's going to be a ton of emotions for him going back to Detroit, a place he spent a lot of time, built that team up, and now having to go face them, especially the fact that they're coming off this loss on Monday night where nothing really went as planned.
Yeah.
And when you imagine, you know, going into a division game, Monday Night Football, prime time, the new era, having the offensive-minded guru head coach, and it falls flat. If I imagine Ben Johnson's like, we got to bounce back, and we got to bounce back quick.
It's a tough recovery process, no doubt, because you're going to play the two-time defending division champions on their home turf. And by the way, they're wounded coming off their own 0-1 start with a loss at Green Bay. And so the urgency of this game kind of combines with the emotions that you talk about for Ben Johnson, going back to where he coached for the last several years and trying to find the winning formula to get his team back on track. It's going to be a hard juggle for Ben to go through, but I do think that he does obviously have the intensity and the ability to dial in, and they're going to have to figure out a way to wake up all three phases, because it was a complete collapse across the board on Monday night.
Guys, let me jump in a second with Tina, because Tina had the opportunity to do the post-game show after the whistle on our Fox social media and also our digital channels. And after the show, I noticed, after the whistle, obviously, Jim Miller, former Bears quarterback, and Pat the designer from ESPN Radio, really focused on missed opportunities by the Bears on that show. Do you feel the same way after listening to the head coach the last couple of days?
Yeah, I mean, I think you heard Dan and Cassie just talk about it. It was a collapse there, especially in the fourth quarter. You were up 17-6 there, up by 2 scores. And I think, for me, big picture, you're testing the toughness of this team. I mean, you can't let your foot off the gas. They got to figure out how to finish. All
right, I want to bring back Cassie and Dan because, guys, Ben Johnson spoke to the media yesterday and today. Before I brought you aboard, I talked about loving the guy's transparency. Dan, I've heard you talk about it on the radio a number of times. And he said yesterday that he heard the boos. He was also self-critical. This was his first game, though. He'll learn and he'll be better against Detroit. Won't he, Dan?
Yeah, you would think so. And I think that Ben's candid nature is really refreshing because he is willing to own his own mistakes. And so you see things happen in the course of a game like Monday night and you go, well, I got some questions about that. To hear the head coach say, yeah, I have my own questions about some of the decisions I made with the challenge, with the decision to kick off there late in the game that cost them the 2-minute warning and the ability to stop the clock one more time at a critical juncture of the game. There are things that he wants to improve on in game 2 as a head coach. And this is going to be a learning process, as it is with every first-time head coach, to kind of navigate those bumps in the road. But I think his ability to be self-critical and self-reflective is important.
Well, and I think that's one of the main things that people took away from just his first post-game press conference is when he said, you know, I need to be better. That's on me. I need to put our team in the best position to go out there and win. And then I thought that was reiterated today when he was asked how to get Kyle Monungai, a rookie running back, involved more. He said, I need to call more run plays. And I think to hear that from a head coach is pretty refreshing because this is also a coach who, you know, wanted to establish the run. And then he said they just didn't stick to that enough and didn't have that going for them in the game. And he should have just called it more and more and more and let them eventually get that run game going, kind of like the Vikings did, right? Because that wasn't there for them in the first half, and then they stuck it with it. And you saw Jordan Mason really and Aaron Jones bring that run game to life, and it opened up so much more for J.J. McCarthy in the passing game. So I think, to Dan's point, the transparency is refreshing, and I think that Ben Johnson, the fun thing about going from week 1 to week 2, especially with a new head coach and us seeing it all for the first time, is, all right, how can he make these adjustments? Is he true to his word? Is he going to stick to the run? Because we know Detroit is going to want to do the same thing because they only rushed for, 56 yards against the Packers last week, too.
Hey guys, Vikings quarterback J.J. McCarthy today was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Week for his comeback in that game. That was McCarthy's first NFL regular season start. Clearly, he outplayed Caleb Williams when the Cards were down in the fourth quarter, and Caleb was playing in his 18th NFL career start. I've talked about it on the air the last couple of days. Williams' inaccuracy, in my opinion, was a huge issue on Monday. It was last season as well. We all know that. Why does Ben Johnson think that Caleb Williams is having such a difficult time being in sync with his wide receivers and that accuracy issue that he's going through right now?
Lou, there's been a lot of talk around here about the footwork and making sure that your feet are right and getting you to make the deliveries where they need to go with the football. We saw in two critical moments on Monday night that be awkward and erratic, and you missed the 4th and 3 to DJ Moore in the second quarter. That's a game-changing play right there that loses you a football game in the end. You see the one to Cole Kmet at a similar point in the field on that critical third quarter drive, and you say, why are his feet so erratic that these balls are missing by a wide margin, right? They're not just missing, they're bad misses, they're wild pitches. And so they've got to get that cleaned up. I think between the accuracy issues and the false start and the cadence issues, there's a heavy lift here going into play a very difficult Lions defense on the road this weekend.
Right, we'll see if they use the silent cadence because it's going to be so loud, and maybe that's a benefit actually to this offense given the fact that Caleb Williams has worked on changing his cadence to use it as a weapon going into the season because it was pretty dumbed down going into his rookie year. So I don't think that they are quite on the same page yet. And that just can't show up consistently. You can't have 12 penalties for 127 yards and 4 of those being false starts in any game, especially against a division opponent in a tough game. I think the problem with the inaccuracy is the feet and the eyes, and the feet or the eyes looking first before the feet get there. And so he's not really able in the position to make those throws. But I just remember watching him from the press box and thinking these balls are sailing. And this was an issue last year with him and DJ Moore a lot of times of not quite being on the same page.
Well, and in training camp, some of these throws were behind the receivers, and it was like an overcompensation on Monday night where those 2 misses were way out in front of the receivers. And so you got to find a healthy middle ground that allows your playmakers to make plays.
But I think the thing, too, with Caleb Williams is it goes back to the conversation of what makes him special, and everyone says he's so good when things break down and he can be out of system. But Caleb Williams, in year 2, one of the most important things is going to be able to show that he can play in system, and specifically in Ben Johnson's system, who should be the one to set him up to succeed.
Let me get one more question in before we need to take a timeout, and I need to ask you two guys because you've been at Hallis Hall. When is Roschon Johnson coming back? I mean, Eagles just picked up Tank Bigsby from the Jaguars for a 5th and 6th round draft pick. I mean, this team needs a little help at the running back spot. What do you think? When is Johnson coming back?
You would hope this week that he'd be back on the practice field. The last time that we saw him practice, I think, was in that well-documented war practice that they had the week of the Dolphins joint practice here at Hallis Hall, and that was a few days before that. So it's been a while now, and you need some more depth in that backfield for sure. I thought some things that DeAndre Swift did in the third quarter were encouraging, but you need to have some depth, and you need to be able to have different ways to carry the ball as well.
Yeah, and Ben Johnson has never at any point seemed too concerned about the depth they have at the running back position, saying they will give it to Kyle Monangai, they will give it to DeAndre Swift, of course, they'll give it to Britton Brown. So I think that's an interesting thing to watch, is maybe just if they decide to have more run plays, who are going to get the secondary carries outside of DeAndre Swift. And if it's not Monangai, is Roschon Johnson going to be able to come in and be kind of that third down back and get those tough yards that we don't always see DeAndre Swift get?